Okay, how's everybody doing? I had to redo all the of my video software and stuff because I had a total computer crash and had to do a complete restore. I'm hoping everything's working like it's supposed to work. I guess we'll find out when we see this live, right? But anyway, we're going to jump right into it. We're picking up off on the history thing. We started off in the 1900s. Working our way through till 1921, the Woodrow Wilson era. We had World War I, a lot of issues going on with the world as well in America, and what we were going through still with the still continuation of the battle between the Democrats and Republicans from the Civil War time, pretty much from the founding of our country, still continued into the 1900s, and we see the rebirth of things with the Democrats and their racist and just sick, evil, elitist ways throughout 1900 to 1921. Though history paints a different picture, and when you read things in history today, which we're going to touch on, about how they have during the periods, like they said, the victor gets the spoils. And when you have periods where those are the enemies within the United States themselves, and the very cause of the issues we still face to this very day, are in power, they're able to rewrite history and erase their evil intent of what they've been doing to destroy this country, and they make themselves look like, great people and heroes. And the posterity of America going forward buys this propagated lie of the rewrite of history by these evil, sick people who have been the enemies within our country now since our country's founding. But we're going to get into that. We're going to look into it as we go forward, reviewing some of the things. We're going to start off with some some positives and how other things went. But let's take a look here. We'll take a look at the web page here and with some information. I picked up some websites to go ahead and put up here so that we can have some kind of visual for what I'm talking about. One of the good things that happened was in 1901. Most people aren't aware that Australia had finally come after like a near 2-decade debate about their constitution. And they had been considering and working with America quite a bit in the last 20 years prior to 1901. And they had finally concluded in 1901 to the Constitution of Australia, which was, I have a book I like very much. It's an original copy. I can show you right here. It's an original copy. This book is, the inside cover is amazing too. If you see, I don't know if you can see that. This right here is a very important to me addition to this book in the original copy because it's called Our Constitution, Civil Bible of America. And I'm going to read this to you real quick because this is the Constitution of the United States and its sources and applications, right? I got this book back when I've had this book for no joke. Oh God, it's I've had this book for like 40 years since I was like probably maybe longer, since I was like 15, 14 years old. I've had this original copy of this book given to me by a friend back then who loved my enthusiasm for my knowledge of my nation and gave me an original copy with the original included signed civil Bible document inside. It was a very, very, to me, I cherish this. I cherish it. But I'm going to read this constitutional civil Bible of America. Menaced by dictators abroad and the collective trends at home, we must seek revive in our strengths in the spiritual foundation which are the bedrock of our republic. Democracy is the outgrowth of the religious convictions of the sacredness of every human life. On the religious side, its highest embodiment is the Bible. On the political, the Constitution. It has been said so well. The Constitution is the civil Bible of America, next to the Bible. The best book on the Constitution should be in every home, school, library, and parish hall. Next to the Bible. Because our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and America is in God we trust. That's who we are, and we are a Christian-founded nation. As I mentioned in my prior video, I have closed down my HVAC air conditioning business. And I have left the trades after 37 years of doing what I love for the public in public service in the construction trades, so that I can go full head into trying to do my best in serving my country to bring about the truth of our history and to make it well known to that of the American posterity, that truth, so they can be true Americans. But with that said, we're back to our history point here. The Constitution here, in this book too, it also references about Australia. And most people don't realize that the world at the state, let's just take a quick brief of the world at the state of where we're at. At the time in the 1900s where we're coming to this, we have, because of America, the United States of America, we had this industrial boom of revolution like you wouldn't believe, and innovation too, and technology advancements like unprecedented, even thought of just a century prior. Things that a century prior would have been considered witchcraft and impossible magic. But yet, in the innovation of the drive of free men, the evolution of an invention was unleashed for the world. But with that became also the destruction of humanity's own evil intent to destroy itself and use those inventions for war. And that's the sad part of it. But the good part of it is we were advancing in technologies and understandings of so many things in this world that the world had become a stage of what would have been, like I said, 100 years prior, considered mythical dreaming, not possible. And, we had great world things going on. But around the world itself and its world leaders and its structure of totalitarianism, with that of monarchies, kings, rulers, emperors, and such, still existed as it had been for tens of thousands of years. And those world rulers did not like America, and they still don't to this very day. And there's good cause for it, because you know what? If their people, like you take for instance, if the people in China were to wake up and realize, wow, there's like billions of us, and the entire governing Communist Party that's controlling us and making our life hell only consists of this small little group of people, we could overthrow them and take power like the American people and be free people. Whoa, what would happen to the Communist Party in China, right? The curtain would be removed, the Wizard of Oz, right? Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. And that's all foreign governments, and today even governments still are. They're the fraud behind the curtain. They act like the mighty power, but it's really just smoke and mirrors. And this ideology of governing totalitarianism is in the form of what it still exists to this very day, believe it or not, comes from ancient times. It was founded by the Babylonians and the Egyptians back almost 9,000 years ago. This whole idea of the costumes, putting on the appearance of authoritarianism, creating rankings so that people would be loyal in ranks to that of who consents to those ranks, positions of authority and such. These things were all evolved back 9,000 years ago with the Babylonians and the Egyptians. And when you look back at when they evolved it 9,000 years ago is where we start to see the rise of civilizations within massive governing, controlling sectors and tribes in them regions in that time, to where we see these things that are now the very same to this day. Believe it or not, when we look at the stem of the final resolve of the Babylonian and Egyptians' injection into the world of these governing forms of authoritarianism with totalitarian intent, we find that the very establishing sects, continents, rulings of governing at that time in the world still exist to this very day. And it's scary when you realize that some of the very names of the family heirs through the monarchies are that of the emperors, demigods, or self-proclaimed gods, still exist as the ruling elites of those countries and those provinces to this day. So understand, these people know what they're doing. They've been doing it for tens of thousands of years. But with that said, Australia is a country that was, in 1901, it enacted. Now, when we look at Australia, it says that Australia, this is just a thing I got up for a graphic of it, but it's a continent and a country, and it is true. And what it makes up, it's the comparison of the Constitution of Australia and the United States. Now, what most people don't know is Australia in 1901, pretty much after all the debates for 20 years, decided to pretty much like verbatim the United States Constitution. They just verbatim it. They pretty much took the United States of America off the top of our Constitution and put Australia. And they were the first country to become our world allied as an entire country that was in alignment of a constitution verbatim, near verbatim to the United States. So they were like a sister, they became in 1901 a sister nation. And we had gained our first world ally. And as you can see too, and this is a big thing because this gave us a centralized power under that of republicanism, like is America, now on another part in the continent of the world. We were growing as America. This became a great threat to the world. Now, you know, the thing of it is, most people don't realize that when Australia did this is what started the very, you know, not to say that it wasn't going on prior, it was. There was issues going on with the world monarchies and rulers, the totalitarians themselves. The thing with totalitarian rulers is they're allies with an understanding of that in the end there can only be one. You see, all are vying for world domination and control, and they all know in the end there can only be one. They were allied helping break it down to just them existing, and then they'll totally cannibalize each other until there's just one. This has been going on for 10,000 years that we know of in world written history. It's been an ongoing thing for 10,000 years, this quest for world domination and control by the totalitarian-minded sick people who are behind it. But Australia caused an upset worldwide because Australia was the first, as you could say, thread that started to make the blanket that would spread republicanism as Americanism around the world. You see, the world had seen that, oh my God, people are catching on. You see, the Australian people now would be free like America, and they would have all the rights like Americans. Now, this would be where they would be centralized within a region of that of totalitarians around them as well, who prior enjoyed the ability. What still they did, because they were the monarchy. They had the monarchies of the, the alliance with the UK and things like that, and the emperors and the demigods of, people with their, their sultans and what have you, or the Ottomans. They had broke away by becoming an allied with America. They had broken away from any obligation to these totalitarians, and as well they had gained a protection of America from these totalitarian regimes, especially the then existing Ottoman Empire of the Islamic Muslims, who were targeting Australia, along with many of the United Kingdom, other smaller little provinces like what they called Hungary and other little countries like Germany and what have you, that were seeking to try and gain an alliance in that sense with them, in a sense, not so much an alliance, but more or less take control through an alliance of their own totalitarian regimes, otherwise like the world teaming up on them. Well, now with America as their ally, they could kick sand in everybody's face because they had the world's strongest nation behind them now as an ally, and the world did not like this. So in the good of this happening, with Americanism starting to spread, the bad of it was it started the seed that would eventually lead to the outbreak of what would become the War of Wars, the Great War, where an estimated almost, like we talk about individual wars like the Civil War, several 100,000 people, or 700,000 actually, near a million American, died in that war. And we say that's one of the most highest casualty wars. But when you look at the War of Wars, World War I, we find that, we're talking more like, I believe it was 17 million people died in that war. 17 million, that's a massive number. And that's a lot of people that died, but it was a world war. And what was the fight over? Well, we'll talk a little bit more as we progress forward. But anyway, we're going to move on with history. So anyone that didn't realize that Australia became our ally in 1901, verbatim the United States Constitution. And at that time, it would be the first time that America had a world continent country as a complete ally that was literally a sister nation. Our Americanism was spreading. And then so as we see here, we have the comparison of the Constitution of Australia and the United States, which if you look at that time, they're verbatim. It's very verbatim. They just pretty much took the United States Constitution and put Australia at the top of it. No joke. And that's the way it is. If you do a little due diligence further into it, I'll include links to all the things that I show here. Like this writing here, you can read this, and it has very good information about the things I would recommend get a copy of the book here, the United States Constitution and its sources, right here by Thomas James Norton, right? This is I don't know if you can, I'm trying to get that, there you go, Thomas James Norton. I have, like I say, I'm bragging because I have this original copy, and I love this book. It was given to me. It is an original copy, as you can see, from 1941. See it? Right? This is an original copy. I love this book, but and I've read it many times, and I like it. It has very good. It was one of the times of the first hard copy editions of the Constitution. This is one of the first hard copy editions of the Constitution, like being done in public form, handed out for the people to be able to have in their homes. And it was suggested, like I said, that this book be put with the Holy Bible in every school, parish hall, and courtroom. Yeah. But you know what? We have an obstructing enemy within that doesn't want that, because that they are of the people of ancient time before America was established, and why America was established, who wanted to take books from the people, keep people illiterate where they couldn't read, and they had to rely on that of the elitist status totalitarian scumbags who would gather the people and act like the elitist who can read and had education, and they would just tell the people what they need to know. Yeah, you see, that's the point of ignorance, is to keep people unaware of what is real and what they should have. One thing America realized, and it's been known for a long time, even before they established America, which is that America was the first nation to ever rise up and actually take into possession and control and hold that as a foundation of its nation, was that we don't need to know anything of what's self-evident. That's self-evident by the laws of nature as placed by nature's God. And that's what America was founded upon, the self-evident of the laws of nature as placed by nature's God. They're self-evident. They're unquestionable. But, so as we move forward now, we get into what we know as the Woodrow Wilson era. And Wilson was a guy who's a Democrat. And, you know, as we go forward, we're going to look into this. World War I in the outbreak was in December, is over the assassination of Fernand. Okay, if I said his name wrong, you know, I don't speak very proper. I'm not a properly educated man. I'm a self-educated man. This guy here, when he got killed, and then too, you even got to look and realize, this guy was considered, I believe, like an emperor. And there was a royal monarchy establishment going on. Now, there was some of the reason that they wanted to kill this guy was because if they hadn't killed him, because this was in Austria, they hadn't killed him, then there would have been another alliance to that of the Constitution of the United States, because they were considering, in honesty, dissolving the monarchies of what's, in truth, United Kingdom, England. You know, they didn't agree with this either. Those are the totalitarian regimes who still ruled by monarchy of emperors and kings and what have you. They didn't like this idea of Americanism spreading, and where, you know, the elite are taken off their pedestals and put down amongst the equal with the people. They don't like that. So eventually this guy, he gets killed, because these are the things that are happening when Australia, like I said, this all starts with Australia now being one of the nations, because how do you be a republic and still allow for that of monarchies with kings, when in a republic, is like the United States is founded, all are equal. There can be no elitist status. America no longer, like with our founding of our country, we realize that we do not, and we know there is no such thing as any kind of a blood. There is no bloodline of a people who are greater than any other people. All people are just people. All people are created equal. One thing God gives me in great wisdom of what is God's wisdom, and I respect God's wisdom. I love God. God loves me. God loves America. And let me tell you something. My Lord Jesus, I pray all the time to God, and I meditate with God, and I get wisdom from God. And God's wisdom in relation to these things, God tells me that all men are created equal. All men and women, all are created equal. After the point of creation, equal to what is up to us by our own free will. You see, that's what sets the difference between people. God creates all of us equal. After the point of creation, we're the ones, by our own free will, who create the unequal, or the imbalance. We are the ones of our own ego, our self-desires, of our own ability to control our own evils within. We seek elitism and control and power. And when we have those of us who do that, and we see it, and we allow it, and we don't correct it, we don't stop it, we don't obstruct it, Well, we wind up with totalitarian elitist scumbags ruling the world, and that's what we've had now. And what they use is fear, torture, evil, just evil play. It's just a constant ongoing thing that's been this way now for 10,000 years throughout world history. We see it. The inhumanity of humanity, I guess you could say. But anyway, when this guy gets assassinated, this was the spark off of World War I. And this starts in 1914, following Woodrow Wilson's election and becoming president of the United States, which, as we go forward, you'll see is a questionable. Some of the current events as well stem all the way back with this guy. It's amazing. But here we have World War I right here. Now, I'm just going to touch on some things here. This was, like it says here, the World War I, also called the First World War or the Great War. And it was the Great War because it was the First World War. And in this war, you had 18 embroiled most of the nations of Europe, along with Russia and the United States, the Middle East, and other regions. The war pitted the Central Powers, which were mainly Germany, Austria, Hungary, and Turkey, against allies, mainly France, Britain, Russia, Italy, Japan, and from 1917, the United States. But in honesty, when you really do your due diligence on World War I, you find the United States never really declared war on anybody. We entered the war as an allied assistance to that of our allies. Okay, we went in to aid that of France, Great Britain, Italy, and Japan. And it's funny, right? Because the next war, they become enemies. It's boom, right? It's crazy. But this is the deal. That these were the what they call the Axis and the Allies, right? You know how it goes with the names and all the fancy stuff with different things they want to do it. And this right here too, like I say, when you have these people come up with all these different titles, when you have a people that it was just a war, okay? It was a war between evil, sick, disgusting, elitist kings, wannabe kings and emperors, demigod people, these elitist scumbags, wanting to suppress the common of humanity and have them under their authority, people, over that of the common people who didn't want to be controlled by totalitarian scumbags like which they were. Okay, that's really what it comes down to. You don't need all these fancy titles and different definitions of the so-called properly educated. As I went to, and that right there is actually called the Axis. Okay. Yeah, okay. Stick it up your ass. That's what I got to tell you as an American. Stick it up your ass. That's the enemies. Just call them the enemies. That's who they are. Okay? But anyway, we move forward. Okay, World War I. World War I pitted Germany, Austria, Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire against Great Britain, the United States, France, and Russia, Italy, and Japan. Now, the most important thing you got to understand, who is the instigator behind all this? Well, in truth, it was Austria-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire. And who were the Ottoman Empire? The Ottoman Empire was a long-standing enemy of America. Matter of fact, the Ottoman Empire has been at war with Americans since America claimed its independence. Okay, and they had one. And now the Ottoman Empire Islamic Muslims have had one ally in America since the founding of this nation. In the beginning of our nation's founding, if you watch my history videos, you'll understand. You'll know who I'm talking about. They were the Tory. They were the kingsmen, the loyalists of Great Britain and the monarchy of kings and that kind of totalitarian rule. In 1826, they became the Democratic Party. So understand this enemy still exists among us and has been with us ever since that time, and they've been with us since the Revolutionary War. So in that time there, they knew, and as well so did their allies of here, like it says right here, you had Austria, Hungary, Germany, and Great Britain. It was they pitted Germany, Austria, Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire. Those were the three, continents or countries of alliance in the totalitarian regime. Now, the reason why these people were upset, because like I said, when you look at Australia prior was under monarchy rule. They had kings. They honored the queen, such and blah, 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 that crazy elitism of ancient time with the kings and rulers and things and such like that. And now that was at threat with them adapting the United States Constitution, and now everyone becoming of equal. And now where does that place all their allies who are now kings and emperors and demigods in their fantasy world of delusional elitism? Well, and they realize, what, Australia made this big mistake. because now what are they going to do? And they gotta stop this spread of Americanism. Okay, and in fact, they don't tell you that back in that time during World War One, that's exactly what World War One was about: stopping the spread of Americanism. And in America itself, they had an ally, the Democrats, who were trying to, from inside of America itself, trying to do all they could to stop the spread of Americanism and do all they could to aid that of their allies in world totalitarian regimes. And as we progress forward, we'll see the Democrat Woodrow Wilson did his part as best of what he could to aid them without actually causing an insurrection uprising in our nation, which I, in my opinion, think we should have revisited a second civil war here instead of, because the Democrats, what they did during the Wilson era and this time here, it was just freaking inhumane. And yet history paints it off as if Woodrow Wilson was some kind of hero to this nation. And some of the things they say is just crazy. But the Ottoman Empire, like I say, was the foundational principles of World War I. That was the Islamic Muslims. The Islamic Muslims at this time, as well from the founding of our nation, the first four administrations of the United States of America had condemned the Islamic Muslims and declared them the enemies of America and the American people. Our first founding president, George Washington himself, considered them the enemies of mankind and said that if the world should ever be able to form a power strong enough to wipe them off the face of the earth, that would be best to be done. So you just understand how strongly these were the enemies of the United States and the American people, and declared by the first four administrations of our nation, and from there forward it was just a well-known. The only ones who were allied to those people and kept an alliance with them was the Democrats. And the reason why the Democrats kept an alliance with the Islamic Muslims throughout history was because the Democrats were the Confederate slave states. And the Democrats were a slave kind of nation. They were elitism people. The Tory were known as the Kingsmen of elitist scumbags. And what they wanted to do, and then their alliance formed long before America even existed, because where they got all their slaves from, 99% of all black African slaves that were shipped here, purchased by the British king and brought here to labor on the plantations and farming districts in the southern areas, were purchased from the Islamic Muslims because they dominated the world slave trade. So, most people, they blame America, but in truth, the Islamic Ottoman Empire, the Islamic Muslims, they started the black African slave trade in 640 AD. That's near 1,100 years before America, the continent of America, even gets inhibited by Europeans. I mean, cut me a break. It's ridiculous. The funny and ironic thing is, in this very day, still in the Islamic states, under Islamic Sharia law, slavery is still legal and allowed. And guess what? They still have black African slave trade going on in the Islamic states right now. And you got these ignorant black Americans in this country right now, totally blinded by ignorance and the idiocy of false information and lies by the Democrats on history, believing that, America was the founder of the black African slave trade. How ridiculous is this? But anyway, a little due diligence. And you can't blame. Honestly, let me tell you something. I just want to take a brief moment on that. I talk with a lot of people, and they say to me, well, look at the way they did that. Let me tell you something. I come from Newark, New Jersey, and I am self-educated and everything. And in truth, to be honest with you, I didn't even start to attend school really until I was like 13 years old. Okay, if they tried to make me go to school, I got in a fight, or I beat up the teacher, or I did something, I got thrown out. I had no time for school. I wanted to be up in the city somewhere like on Market Street or up in Manhattan, shining shoes, making money. I just didn't go to school. But I wasn't stupid, because I taught myself to read pictorially from a dictionary. My mother helped me learn, and my stepdad helped me learn when I was a kid. I would sit and point at the word, they would read the word, say what the word is, and they would tell me what it means, and I would just memorize it by picture. And that's how I pictorially learned to read. And by the age of 5, actually it was before I was 5 years old, right around 5 years old, because I remember I was just turning 5, because I got that dictionary from my Uncle Bernard, who we called Unc, and he got me that dictionary because I kept saying I want a dictionary, because that's what I was told all the words were. And that's, if you want to read, you got to know all the words in the dictionary. That's just a thing. As kids, you don't know. But I got the dictionary that year for Christmas, and that was a month before my birthday. So I turned 5, and so by the time I was 6, I could read and I could even write. I started to learn to write. Taught myself to write, and by the time I was 7, I taught myself to read and write both in cursive and print. So, because I had found libraries, and I was able to go in libraries. Once I learned to read, I would go in libraries. Books were like, oh my God, that's it. I found knowledge. I just became a book nut. I wanted to read and learn everything. And pretty much that's how I know everything. I learned everything on my own. So, and then by the time I did go to school, I thought I was going to be the idiot, because I really didn't go to school much. But I was bored as hell when I went to school, because by the time I attended school, I already knew math, English, and I really knew history and world cultures like you wouldn't believe. I mean, I had, growing up in Newark, New Jersey, and my backyard being New York City for shining shoes, I was exposed to the world. I mean, in New York City, you had people coming and going every day from all around the world: Italy, Spain, Greece, Egypt, China, Japan, Ireland, you name it. There was Poland, Iran. There was always people from all around the world, and I was a shoeshine kid, and I would get to meet all these people. And New York had all these diverse areas. You had the Irish area, you had the little Chinatown, you had the little Iranian neighborhoods. You just had everything. You had, everything was in New York and the same thing over in New Jersey in the city area. You had a lot of that too. You had the little Irish areas. You had the, like East Orange was mainly a lot of the Irish and, what have you, just saying, that's the way it was. Just Italy, you had, Italians and Hillside area, you know what I'm saying? And so, in Irvington, you had the mix or whatever, they call them, and Spanish and, Mexicans or whatever. It was just the way it was, But anyway, I'm losing track here. Let's get back to what I'm talking about, history. So here we are, the Ottoman Empire. So we know who they are, the Islamic Muslims. The Federal Reserve Act is something that Woodrow Wilson did. Now, this was, a lot of people try to put this off as it was a good thing. It was a bad thing for America. Up until this point, you see, the Federal Reserve, in a sense, was because those of elitist power of the Democrats did not feel that America could rely on its own wealth or its own ability to build wealth, which was wrong. You see, we could, and we did, and that was how we got to this point from 1776 all the way to 1900, was by our own doing. We didn't rely on any foreign country or any foreign funding or any foreign people to help us. We did it on our own, eternally with our own. Okay? And up until this point, which we had seen hard times like after the Civil War, which was caused by the Democrats, which resulted in the debt that we were in so bad because of the Democrats in that time. We had a large amount of debt, and this was part of the thing that led to the potential restructuring, because, we had to rely on the wealthy people in our country. Now, the good thing about it was that the Democrats, for the majority throughout history, have been lazy, elitist, status-minded people who really don't do much and don't want to do anything really except for take from other people. Republicans, on the other hand, are the true American Republican. Maybe not so much of what is today the Republicans, because they're not of what the true Republicanism is, of what I consider myself a Republican is. I'm a Thomas Jefferson, James Madison kind of Republican. Okay, I'm under the true founding principles of republicanism, of what this nation was founded upon. Because, throughout history, too, when an enemy within that has control within our governing factor in our society, they have the ability to twist the meanings of these things, infiltrate these things, and make themselves appear as a part of these things. So it becomes very confounding for the posterity as these things continue on, and we as the American people let them. And that's why we're in the state we're in right now. But anyway, the Federal Reserve Act, we created a banking system, a centralized banking system, that we could borrow now from other countries. Now, the bad thing about this was, but now our assets now become the security for those loans, which means now we are giving foreign countries the ability to own America. Not a good thing. Not a good thing. Okay, I'm just putting it to you in layman terms. I understand economists and people of so-called paper brains that got, they went to the Wizard of College, and the guy behind the curtain, the wizard, gave them their paper brain like he did to the, straw man. It was a straw man, yeah. A straw man had the paper brain. Like if you really believe. Now, let me tell you something. Knowledge without wisdom is worthless information. You could learn everything you want. Go to college, learn everything you want. Matter of fact, I'm gonna give you a quick analogy I use all the time in relation to, so people understand. If you go to college, or you're thinking about going to college, or you're thinking about knowledge and what have you, and learning. Learning is a good thing. I'm all about learning, reading, studying, and doing due diligence. But that's the thing, doing due diligence. Not only just taking what you see as knowledge, but fact checking and verifying that that knowledge is real. You see, you got to be careful, because there's his story, and then there's his story, and then there's the truth. And if you want to know the truth, you're going to have to question everybody's story. And you're going to have to break it down. You're going to have to come to your own conclusion by your own due diligence to understand the truth. And that's going to take effort. And that's the problem, you see, because a lot of people don't want to put in the effort. They don't want to take the time. And I'll tell you what, I get a lot of people I talk to that are doctorates in history, doctorates in things. They're doctorate. I'm a doctor. Doctor, I've been studying so long, I'm a doctor. Yeah, cut me a break, this elitist status minded set of people. Look, I've been doing what I've been doing for 37 years. I don't consider myself, I'm a doctor. I'm just good at what I do. I have a great amount of wisdom. And the problem as well, academic-wise, if you're an academic doctor, and where you have a knowledge of just knowledge upon knowledge and no wisdom, you're just an educated idiot. And I'm going to give you an example about that. Understand it, because I say these things and people get offended. But when I explain it to those of like in speaking one time with a historian who was a doctor in history, and I said to him, you're just an educated paper-brained idiot. Oh, he got offended. But when I explained to him why and what I meant by this analogy, at the end of it, I remember he was kind of like, I get it. So I'm going to see if you get it. So if you're one of them people that judge me, you think, okay, this guy's an ass. He calls people this. He calls people educated. Listen, I'm going to explain to you what it's all about. When I mean an educated idiot, I mean somebody who has a lot of knowledge of something, but they don't have wisdom. And they don't understand the application of their knowledge, or the effects of what could happen if that knowledge is misappropriated or improperly implemented on society or the world. You see, without wisdom, you don't know what's going to happen. And you could do things where you're repeating things that have already been done because you never did the due diligence to understand the wisdom of how things can be applied and what the cause and the effect of those things can be. So I'm going to give you a quick example. This is just so we understand. So going forward, while you're watching my videos and doing the studying, as you go to study things, consider these things. I'm going to tell you a quick made-up mythical story so you can understand knowledge and wisdom. So I have an uncle. He's fascinated with a certain subject. We're not going to tell you what the subject is first. But he starts going to school. I'm just a kid in summer break, and he starts going to college. He heads off to college. He goes to college for 4 years, right? And I'm just a little kid, and he's one of my favorite uncles. I like the guy. He's talking. He got his bachelor's degree. First he got his associates for 2 years, meaning, and that's what I mean, the degree. I understood as a kid, degree. Oh, that's the degree of study you did, 2 years. So you got an associate, you're associated with it. Bachelor's means that, okay, now you did like you're double the associated with it. And then you're going to go for your doctorate, and then your master's degree after like 6 years, and then your doctorate for 8 years, and that's what he did. He wound up, because I was like maybe, 7 years old when he started going to college. And, now where he's starting to go, and he comes out, he's got his doctorate now. He's got to practice. He's actually teaching people. And he's got these paper brains up on the wall, his degrees, about everything. And he teaches, he does seminars, and people come and they pay him money, and I'm impressed with this because I'm like, wow, people pay you money, huh? And, his profession, he's a doctor, and he's considered an expert in his field. Now, one day, this summer, now that he's a doctorate, and I'm like, 16 years old now, 17 years old, and I had an experience in a summer break, and I realized in that summer, in just one day alone, I had gained more understanding and knowledge and wisdom of my uncle's majored subject than he had in all his 8 years of study, and I knew more than he did. And I went and I told him that. I said to him, you don't know anything. And all that knowledge you have, you're ignorant. You just don't know. And I learned more than you in one day than you learned in all your time, and still more than what you know this very day. Now I'm going to reveal to you the subject. My uncle was a sex therapist and was still a virgin, and I got laid that summer. Make sense? You understand what I'm saying? Wisdom is the experience. Wisdom is, you see, how could you be a sex therapist and still a virgin? Be teaching people, telling people. It's kind of like, too, like you have marriage counselors who've never been married. Stupid. And then, two, why would you go to a priest in the Catholic Church for marriage counseling? This guy's a virgin. He's never been married. Doesn't know anything about relationships. Don't be stupid. That's stupid. Or you got a marriage counselor you go to, and it's a single woman or a single guy who's never been married. Come on. You want to know, and that's the problem we have with elitism, you see, in education and knowledge and the balancing things here. And the reason I recognize these things, because I studied ancient world history. And I'm going to tell you what, the psychology is where it comes into play. In America, we had a large taking off with the psychology, and believe it or not, it was very influenced by George Washington in psychology. George Washington and Thomas Jefferson had some amazing conversations, and many of the letters that you can find in the Federal Archives, which it makes you so aware of just how genius and smart George Washington was, far greater than what we portrayed the man to be. He was incredibly smart. And believe me, if you think Thomas Jefferson was wiser or more smarter, believe me, he was a mentor. He was mentored by George Washington, and he knows that. Thomas Jefferson, in his own letters and everything that he knew, he understood that he was the student and that George Washington was the teacher. And he understood that. George Washington had way greater wisdom than he had, because Thomas Jefferson was academically smart. George Washington was actually world smart. Big difference. Same thing between Madison and James Madison and Thomas Jefferson. James Madison had a little bit higher degree of wisdom and world experience and cause and effect than that of Thomas Jefferson. So when you study world history, you see the understanding, the levels of what I would call respect that has to be given to the higher. It would be George Washington, James Madison, then Thomas Jefferson, in my opinion. But so you just understand. But anyway, the Federal Reserve Act signed into law. We're going to get back to this. I'm just rambling on to some things that I want people to get and think about. So I'm sorry if I go off a little bit. I just do these things. Okay, I don't have a script. So anyway, but I do have an idea of what I want to do. So now we're going to go back to this. And what I'm trying to do is plant seeds. So if you get the seed and you think about it, you go, and it hits you, great. Job's accomplished. Federal Reserve Act signed into law, right, by Woodrow Wilson, was done by Wilson and the Democrats because, like I said, they're the enemies within. They themselves wanted to give power to that of foreign nations, that of their foreign allies, to be able to again take control of America. And who would be at the root of this lending institution? No other than our first enemy of who we broke away from, Great Britain, right? This would be who we would establish to be starting to borrow money from again. Who still had a queen, right? Who still was under the monarchy. What idiots. And because we allowed these enemies within, and we allowed them, which Wilson actually stole the election. He didn't win that election legitimately. The Democrats haven't won many elections legitimately. And many times, since after the Civil War, they have just taken the elections and nobody's done nothing about it. And this is a fact in history. Because as time would progress, that of Republicans would become cowards, of which today in America, the majority are, as they were in the founding of this nation, worthless cowards, disgraceful cowards. But we'll get to that later. But anyway, so the Federal Reserve was not a good thing for the United States. We should have kept our gold standard. We should have kept our money, and we should have kept our faith and security in our financial being among ourselves. We had plenty of wealth, and what time would prove, because we became the wealthiest nation. But now today, we are the greatest nation of debt. Right? So as you can see, don't tell me it's working. It's not, because we are the greatest nation of debt. And the funny thing about it is, today, with all of our massive debt, do you know that a large part of our debt is because we keep giving money to other countries that are richer than us? Right? Does that make sense? That are actually our enemies, like China? Yeah, we give money to them for their poverty while we have massive homelessness across our own country. Boom. Who's behind that? Democrats. Now, that doesn't make the Republicans sitting by doing absolutely nothing because they're worthless goddamn cowards, nothing but a bunch of talking heads. They're just as guilty because they really do absolutely nothing. They're willing to take that big welfare check every month for their elected high-paid position with their great benefit package and where their total freedom and they can do whatever they want and they hardly even freaking work. Okay? But when it comes down to actually having to put something on the line, like fight, put their self on the line, put their life at risk, no, they're not really willing to do that. They're not real Americans. They're disgraceful, no good, worthless, disgusting, paper-brained idiots is what they are. Not real Republicans. They're no real Republicans. They're no Abraham Lincolns. They're no Cassius Marcellus Clay. That's for damn sure. They're no George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, or James Madison. They're freaking worthless goddamn cowards is what they are. But anyway, like I said, we'll get to that forward. But anyway, back to the Balfour Declaration, too. This was something announced support for the establishment of a nation home for the Jewish people. Woodrow Wilson. I want to go back real quick right here, just because I had this thing we're going to get to. So we're coming up right here, Woodrow Wilson. I want to read what this says. Like here, Woodrow Wilson, the 28th President of the United States, right? This is what they say about Woodrow Wilson. Listen to this. Woodrow Wilson, a leader of the progressive movement, was the 28th President of the United States from 1913 to 1921. After a policy of neutrality at the outbreak of World War I, Wilson led America into war in order to make the world safe for democracy. What a freaking joke. Okay? Like Roosevelt before him, Woodrow Wilson regarded himself as the personal, really, this guy was nothing like Roosevelt. Anyway, representative of the people, no one but the president, he said, seems to be accepted. To look out for the general interest of the country, he developed a program of progressive reform and assertion international leadership and building a new world order. Listen to that, new world order. And he did. He was the founder of what would start the foundation for America slipping into that world order kind of thing, or what the Democrats are always seeking to have. Okay, building a new world order. In 1970, he proclaimed America's entrance into World War I, a crusade to make the world safe for democracy. Wilson had seen the frightfulness of war. He was born in Virginia in 1856, the son of a Presbyterian minister who during the Civil War was a pastor in Augusta, Georgia, and during Reconstruction, a professor in the Cherry City of Columbia in South Carolina. After graduating from Princeton, a paper-brain idiot, then the College of New Jersey, and the University of Virginia Law School, Wilson earned his doctorate at Johns Hopkins University and entered upon an academic career in 1885. He married Ellen Lewis Exon. Okay, so he married into money of that of what was a former massive plantation and slave owner, and he was raised silver spoon on money, lacking any true wisdom or knowledge of life. He was a paper-brained, academic, educated idiot, but he was also a very evil, despicable, elitist scumbag is what he was. And as we progress forward, like I say, going into these things here, we're talking about here with the Balfour Act. The Balfour Act is a thing that involved on the progression of going on between some of the issues we face today, like you have right now with the Palestinian state and Israel, right? This goes back at this time here. Now, America, as Republicans, when our nation was founded and we enacted our amendments and we had the right to freedom of religion, the freedom of religions in the First Amendment state that no establishment of religion, right? And the reason being that that law would protect that of what was established only within the jurisdiction of America at the time the amendments were being written. And at the time, when the First Amendment was written, there was only Jewish synagogues and Christian churches in America. So that would be what that amendment of the right of protection of freedom of religion, an expression of that, of any established religion would be blanketed under. It would be those of which were established in America, not those to come or those of other countries, only those which were within the jurisdiction and the authority of America, the United States. That's it. But, you know, now with Wilson, now the problem is he's a Democrat, okay, and now I'm going to go forward here. We're going to look right here. Woodrow Wilson, the Balfour Declaration, right? Now, the Balfour Declaration is an agreement with America through the Democrats with that of world orders who are trying to control the Jews and control the Palestinian Muslims. Okay? Who do you think the Democrats would really ally with? The Jews or the Muslims? Of course, the Muslims. They hate the Jews. Woodrow Wilson was a Klans member. He was a KKK guy. He hated the Jews. Okay, but America didn't hate the Jews. Okay, America loved the Israel, and America loved the Jewish people because they were the principal foundation of the Old Testament of what establishes our Christian foundation, because we know as a Christian founded nation that Jesus manifested as God, was God manifested as man, came for the salvation of all humanity. America was founded upon the Christian foundation and principles of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, in whom we trust, right, as Americans. And the Jewish people are the foundation of the prophecy that leads to that. So we have always had this alliance. The Jews may not agree with Jesus. That's okay, because in the prophecies it says they wouldn't. And those of Christians, we can respect that. Because, and we can coexist. We can coexist. And we have coexisted since the founding of our nation. And we coexist fine. We go along fine. But Woodrow Wilson, it says here, became like, he did the Belfort Act. And what it would do is kind of give foreign powers the ability to dictate where the Jews would be and where the Muslims would be. And also create a proxy situation and where they could always be having a place to attack the Jews. That would be the Muslims' main goal, would be to destroy the Jews. They hated the Jews. And that has been since Islam has been founded. The Islamic Muslims have hated the Jews and been trying to kill the Jews and to extinct them from the earth since Islam was founded. But anyway, so as we move forward here, it says Woodrow Wilson was a hero to the Jews. Now this is what I mean. When we read about history, Jews long admired Woodrow Wilson for his intellect. This is such lies. This is right out lies. And anyone who could buy this bullshit, really, you're going to tell me, Ku Klux Klan member Woodrow Wilson, who could not stand black people and Jews, was a hero to the Jews? Bullshit. It's amazing how you can write bullshit. And so classically here, and yet, this is something you got to know. When you read something like this, right here, look for footnotes to where it references like something that you can go and put tangible hands on to see a Jew saying this. You don't see it. You don't see it. You don't see a footnote to anything in history of facts. You don't see nothing of anything. All you just see is some Democrat's story that he wants you to believe with no facts at all that he's including. Just a story. He just writes this. That's what Democrats do. They just write this. There's a Democratic written story about a Union soldier who's the father of a Confederate soldier who's crying in the field. He's out crying in the field, and they say, this was the letter of the Star-Spangled Banner was found in this Confederate soldier's pocket as he was dying, and his father crawled out there in the mud to be next to his son while he died. It's all a lie. It's all a lie. It's just total lie. It's not true. And that's what they do. They just come up with these mythical lying stories because they know that if the story sounds good and people... But you see, here's the deal. Whenever you read something, fact check it. Do your due diligence. Make sure it's real. Don't just trust that what you're reading is real on the internet or in any book or publication or newspaper. Fact check it. Because I'm going to tell you something. As a kid, when I learned to read, I started learning to read. I read a lot of things, and I believed everything I read. I thought everything, give you the naiveness of me. When I was a real little kid watching the black and white TV we had, I actually believed, some of the things I seen on TV. Like, I believe Batman was real. I believe Batman was a little kid, was like 5 years old. I believe Batman was real. I didn't know. How are you going to know at 5 years old that he's not real? I really thought, that stuff was going on. It was some Gotham City somewhere. I don't know. 5 years old. How would I know, right? The naiveness. And in the books, the same thing. When I read things, I just believed that, this must be true. Who would write lies, right? Who would write lies? You see, as a child, you don't know how evil this freaking world is until you start to gain wisdom. And I can remember around like 7 years old, 6 years old. I was around almost 7 years old, and I was talking about something, and my stepdad was listening to me, and he said, "That's not true." And I was like, "Oh yeah, it's true. I read it." And he's like, "No, that's not true. I don't care what you read. That's not true." And I was like, "Well, how could it not be true? It was written in the book. I was reading it. I can get the book from the library," I told him. And he said, "You get the book from the library, and we'll look at it." So I got that book from the library. I came home, and we sat and we looked at it. And then he took me back to the library, and he found another book, and he had me read that book. And that book said a whole different story from what the other book said about the same thing. And now I was kind of like, huh. And I remember I said to my stepdad, well, who's telling the truth? And he laughed at me and said, "Neither one of them. Neither one of them." And I said, "Wait a minute. They're both lying?" He said, "Yep, they're both lying. And you know where the truth lies?" I said, "Where?" He said, "In the facts." You see, and that's when I learned that you go by the facts. Now, you see, it's important I'm saying this right now because, you know, the Democratic's new motto that Joe Biden started was, "We choose truth over facts." And that's exactly what I'm talking about. This is exactly what the Democrats does. This is exactly what the world's totalitarian regimes does. This is exactly what Muslims do. They lie. They lie, they rewrite things, and they put things within a perspective of what they want you to believe is the truth. And as long as you don't look at the facts and you accept what they say is the truth, as long as you do that, it's the truth to you. And to them, they have you convinced of it. But if you're going to look at the facts, you're going to find out you've been being lied to about a lot of things. Matter of fact, mostly everything coming out of their frickin' mouth is a goddamn lie. But anyway, Woodrow Wilson, like I say. And now, like I say, I'm going to show you some facts. And then I'm going to ask you, okay, understand now, I think everybody with common sense knows a little bit of due diligence does reveal that the Ku Klux Klan hates Jews and black people, right? You do understand that. And most people, if you're not aware, the Ku Klux Klan was founded by the Confederates following the Civil War. The Confederates were the Democrats. It was the Democratic Party who formed the Confederate slave states, just so you're aware. Now, and then I know by 1900, supposedly according to the Democrats, Ku Klux Klan doesn't exist anymore. Is that so? Let's take a look and see. So as we go forward right here, the Palestinian question, anyway, going back into front, the vain search for the peace in our time has reckoned interest in the story of Woodrow Wilson. Many people have gone back to the study of Wilson's idealism to look for guidance. Few, however, have realized that Wilson had a profound influence on the hottest little problem of today, namely Zionism. In the light of hitherto issued sources in the Department of State, the National Archives, and the Woodrow Wilson papers, it is apparent that 30 years ago, a solution of the Jewish problem along Zionist lines was probable. But anyway, I'll include, you can read all this. But pretty much, there's the Palestinian question of the Wilson era. You can read some things about it, I'll give you some facts to go through. But here's the Ku Klux Klan. Ku Klux Klan right here, it says the Ku Klux Klan, commonly shortened as the KKK, is an American white supremacist terrorist hate group whose primary targets are African Americans as well as Jews, okay? Immigrants, leftists, homosexuals, Catholics, Muslims, and atheists. Now, to be honest with you, they expand this to a lie here. The Ku Klux Klan never had a problem with atheists, never had a problem with Muslims, and never had a problem with Catholics. Homosexuals, and they never had a problem with leftists. They are the leftists. They are the Democrats. Hello? And that's what I'm saying right here. You see this, you got to be careful. Because, like, who would say leftist when you know the right is the Republicans, the left are the Democrats? Why would the Ku Klux Klan, which was founded by the Democrats, hate themselves? Doesn't make sense. They hate that. Now, you see, now, when you ask a Democrat, though, like I've questioned about things like this. You know what they say? Well, right now, most of the black people are Democrats, and we hate them. That's what they say. No joke. I know Ku Klux Klan guys that hate me, and I hate them, but we talk. We've had conflict. In South Carolina, I know a guy, and I also know a guy in Georgia who's an actual Klan guy, and in things of issue and trying to understand and just expanding understanding of knowledge. You know, the guy in Georgia actually is no longer in the Klan. He woke up, thank God. He woke up to reality actually, I attribute part of maybe what I've done and my part in that to helping him wake up to that reality. God willing, I pray, it's in God's hands right now. I just hope that God gives him a light to truth and he really means it. I don't, because I once a Democrat, I never trust anybody again. So I just don't know. But anyway, they'll tell you straight up. And that's what he said. I remember one day questioning him about these kind of things. I said to him, how could you say this or that in relation to that of which is your own party? And he said to me one time, he said to me, well, what you got to understand when we talk about hate the left is that, and he even told me, he's like, when we get to Lyndon B. Johnson and he got all the blacks to become Democrats, well, that left of the Democrats, of course, we're going to hate because we hate blacks. And I'm like, boom, like it just said, but boom, But that's how it goes. If you want to know, if you say to yourself, is it true that the Ku Klux Klan can hate the left? They hate the left of what they propagated to be a part of themselves, that of the black community. Yeah, they hate them. They do. They have to mask it for their agenda, but they hate them. But to their face, they pretend to be their friend, but they hate them. And even with him, when he talked about the time with Lyndon B. Johnson and everything, a lot of things because he was convinced on this party switch thing, but that's another topic. I don't want to get too far off topic. But anyway, the Ku Klux Klan, it's pretty self-evident they hate Jews, right? Now let's go forward here. We see here 100 years later, what's the legacy of the birth of a nation? Now, and this is a movie, The Birth of a Nation, that's about the Ku Klux Klan that was released in 1915, and Woodrow Wilson, as President of the United States, showed this movie in the White House. Showed this movie in the White House. Showed The Birth of a Nation in the White House. Ku Klux Klan. And here, let's see what, Now, you would think, right, the way they write about Wilson, after watching it, he would have condemned this across the country, right? Told the theaters, don't you dare show this. Told them, no. You know what Woodrow Wilson referred to these things as? The birth of the quotation. Woodrow Wilson said it was like writing history with lightning. He loved it. He loved it. He embraced it. Yes, he did. And, right here, the white man, this was the most racist movie. Here he is right here. And the most racist man. The year 1950 marked the 15th anniversary of the end of the 50th anniversary of the Civil War. Monuments to Confederate and Union heroes are being dedicated all over the country. You hear this? Under Woodrow Wilson. All those monuments, we're going to touch on that in a little bit, but, and that's where we are, because you know what? Woodrow Wilson founded Parks and Recreations. He's the guy who put up all the Confederate monuments. He started putting them up everywhere, because the Democrats are very proud of their Confederate slave states. Most people don't want to know that. They don't want to admit that. The ignorance of today that are Democrats have no idea, it seems. Like I said, they just read and believe the truth they're told without ever finding out what really is the truth. But I'm telling you the facts of truth. Woodrow Wilson was a racist, no-good scumbag. And but we're going to go back here real quick to The Birth of a Nation now with Woodrow Wilson. Now, real quick, I just want to go back and see something here if I missed it. Just give me a moment here, people. I kind of lost my own trend of what I'm doing. Thought I had a picture of Woodrow Wilson with somebody I wanted to, but I guess, okay. Well, we'll just pick up here. But like I'm saying right here, this right here and on Clue 2 is that, most people don't realize, Woodrow Wilson enacted Parks and Recreation. Up until this point, there was very few Confederate monuments anywhere, and the only places you would find them was in deep southern states and small little southern towns, and where they hadn't been ordered to be removed yet. Okay, because the Republicans didn't want them. Because one, most people don't seem to understand, which I'm going to touch on real quick right here, and you can do your own due diligence, so take notes here. Understand that the Democratic Party and Democrats are not United States citizens. They were never citizens of the United States. The Democrats were founded out of the British Tory, who were the loyalists to Great Britain and the enemies within. In 1826, they formed the Democratic Party. They have been attempting to overthrow the United States from within since the founding of our country. In 1861, during the breakout of the Civil War, it was the Democrats who formed the Confederate slave states in an attempt to overthrow the United States Republic of the Free United States of America. The United States Republic and the Republicans of that Republic of the United States won that Civil War, and we maintained freedom, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all Americans under that of the protection of our United States Constitution, not the Democratic Party's Confederate States Constitution. Now, if you look at history, you'll find, because a lot of people wonder why weren't the Confederates, there were a lot hung, and not so, and there were some that were known, in a sense, determined Americans, and they were hung for treason. Some were executed for treason. But then the issue got risen about how can a man who's not a citizen of a nation be charged with treason? You see, this is what spared General Lee and also Jefferson Davis, the Democratic president of the Confederate slave states, who founded the Confederate slave states. Jefferson Davis was freed from prison and pardoned because he couldn't be charged with treason against the United States because he was not a citizen of the United States. And General Lee also had to be freed because he was a general of the Confederate slave states of the Democratic Party, not of the United States or the Republican Party. You see, so you can't charge somebody with treason if they're not citizens of the country. So these men were released and pardoned. Now, some people say to me, oh, that sounds ridiculous, Jim. Well, really. Woodrow Wilson, and like I say right here, in 1915, he starts with the Parks and Recreations, which we see here, 1916, right? He starts putting up all these monuments. Just so you know, the Democrats continue to put and try to flood the country with Confederate monuments, even now in the northern states. They were flooding these Confederate monuments all over in the northern states, putting statues up of General Lee, Jefferson Davis. And, some states were not taken too kindly to this, like New Jersey. What's during the presidency of Jimmy Carter, New Jersey wasn't taken too kind to, and Newark Memorial Park was going to be putting up a monument, and I remember this because I remember it live from Wisdom. They were going to be putting up a statue of Jefferson Davis. Well, being Newark for a large part was black Americans. Actually, I grew up in Newark, and and at that time, I was a minority. I was the minority. White people were the minority in Newark. Black people were the majority. So, and they didn't. And I mean, some black people, most blacks at this point here, it was true. The Lyndon B. Johnson effect and also the FDR effect were taking strong effect, and where most black Americans were now Democrats. But there were still a good many who were still Republicans, who remembered who their true allies were and remembered their true American principles and values as a part of the one people of all equal. And they weren't having it. And they raised issue about this. They raised issue very clear in the 1970s with Jimmy Carter that they didn't want these Confederate monuments in the state parks because these men were not even Americans. And it was argued, what do you mean they're not Americans? And then it was brought back up about the trials with the dismissals and the pardons being handed out because they were not citizens, and them not being able to be tried for treason because they were not citizens of the United States. So if you look this up and do your due diligence, you will find Jimmy Carter, I believe it was in 1975, I don't know. Let's see if I can find it. I didn't pull this up. Let me just look. I'm going off memory here, Jimmy. I don't want to be wrong. Right here, okay. Okay, so we'll take a look at this now. We'll see it's coming up somewhere here. Right? The pardon of Jefferson Davis and the 14th Amendment. 1978. Okay? So, in 1978, President Jimmy Carter officially restored the full citizenship rights of former Confederate President Jefferson Davis, signing an act from Congress that ended a century-long dispute. Okay? So understand, up until this point, the Democrats are putting up monuments of non-U.S. citizens claiming them as American war heroes, and they weren't even Americans. So in order for those to stay, the Democrats had to wait for the Democratic president, Jimmy Carter, who would enact and give citizenship to Jefferson Davis, and he also gave citizenship to the rest of those who were up on the monuments, of which we'll touch on some of it as we go forward. And he granted pardons and citizenship. Jimmy Carter, I mean, these people are dead over 100 years now in the ground, you know, and the Civil War is well over 100 years now, but he's giving them now, dead people, citizenship so that their statues, this is how proud the Democrats and how insistent they are having those images, you know, and they want them up. They're proud of their history. And so Jimmy Carter gave citizenship back to General Lee and Jefferson Davis so that the monuments could stand and stay and be erected in state parks across the country on federal property. Okay, just so you're all aware. So that's what he did with Parks and Recreations anyway. And like I say, we talk about now, the funny thing, you want to talk about the ignorance. The majority of people who want these monuments removed, right? We have this thing here, right here, with the list of Confederate monuments and memorials, right? Now, if you notice here, I got this up because if you look here and you look at the dates, right? United States Capitol states Confederate monuments start being placed 1916, 1917, 1920. See, it happens after Woodrow Wilson establishes Parks and Recreations. And it was the Democrats who placed all of them. The Democratic Party is who placed all the Confederate monuments across this country, not the Republicans. Republicans hate the goddamn Confederates. They're the enemies within. They're the Democrats. They've always been the enemies within. They're elitist, no-good scumbags, allied with our world enemies since our founding of this nation. They're the enemies within. They've always been. We hate them. I'm a real Republican. I can't stand those goddamn elitist scumbag Democrats. Now, I'm not talking about the Dino Democrat. Dino Democrat is a Democrat name only. Dino is a name, which, just so you know, and it's amazing that some people, as ignorant as they are, they think this is not. I've had people go, oh, come on, that's made up. No, it's not. It's a fact. When I was a kid, there was a lot of cops in New York City and in Newark. And I even know one that was a good friend of mine, Richard. We haven't been in contact for years, but he was a good friend of mine. Former police officer from New York City, was called, his nickname, Dino. And the reason he was Dino, because he was a Democrat name only. You see, because of the police unions, if you want to have favor in the union or you want to have a better chance of getting a police job, it was best to be a Democrat in the union to get that job. You see, that's how they control these things, the Democrats, with the unions. So, but people would know that, you know, a Republican guy who wants to be a police officer, he becomes a Democrat just for that reason. He's called the nickname Dino. And you know, there was a lot of Dinos in Newark and New Jersey. And I knew as a kid that when people reference somebody as a Dino, you know, all the Republicans would kind of like, hey, and, you know, and if you had a Republican standing with the cop or the guy, and somebody came by and say, hey, Dino, what's up, Dino, you know, and the Republican would look at the cop, and the cop would look at him, and they'd nod their heads like, yeah, they know I'm a Republican. Really, you know what I'm saying? It's Dino, Democrat name only. And then not only is a Dino who's knowingly a Dino, there's also ignorant Dinos, what's make up the majority of that, of the people who are wanting all these monuments removed that are Democrats, that are so ignorant they don't even realize that the monuments they want removed are Democrats. They're all Democrats. You are a part of the Democratic Party's Confederate slave states, you freaking idiots. And I believe I've met many today so-called, quote, Dino Democrats, who when I speak to them, they're Americanized. They have Americanism values. They have more real truth and they don't even know it. They have more Republic values than Democratic values. They're just ignorant to understanding. And when you get to, I've had many leave the Democratic Party after speaking with me for a while, and we lay out the facts of the truth, and we consider those facts. Sometimes very hard to do, though, because the Democrats are very good with their indoctrination methods, and some of them, they just won't listen. They just won't, if you start, they just won't listen. They won't listen. They don't want to know. They just simply don't want to know. Now, in those bases there, like I say, ignorance of the law is no excuse. Ignorance of knowing your place as an American is no excuse. I would advise every Democrat understand something. I don't hate you if you're a Democrat. I just hate you if you're a true Democrat. Because if you're a true Democrat, you're an elitist, no-good, racist scumbag, and you're the enemy within. But if you're just a citizen Democrat who's indoctrinated and ignorant by education and don't truly understand why you're a Democrat because you never did the due diligence, if you do the due diligence and you see the truth, you'll more than likely leave the Democratic Party if you're really an American. Because under the Constitution of the United States, Article 4, Section 4, if you understand the true principles of Americanism, only consents to a Republican form of government, not a democratic democracy. just so you're aware. You'll not find the word democracy anywhere in the United States Constitution or Declaration of Independence ever being mentioned. And if you want to know the great difference between a democratic state and a democracy, and that of a republic state and a republicanism, okay, just look up the Federalist Paper number 10. And it's pretty clearly defined in there, the difference between republicanism and democracy and a democratic state. You'll get it. But if you do look at the due diligence, you do see the truth of it, and you're like, you know what, I don't care, that's what I am, then you're a no good elitist scumbag piece of shit, racist, and you're not an American. Just accept the truth, just like the rest of them. You're not citizens. You are of the Confederate slave states. You're not citizens. You're the enemy within. So you make your choice, because there's going to come a day in this country, a reckoning is coming. And the last time during the Civil War, I think, honestly, in looking at history, what was the biggest mistake we made? The biggest mistake we made was not vetting every Democrat out of this goddamn nation. We should have made sure that we expelled every Tory piece of shit Democrat out of this country after the Civil War. And that includes, sorry to say that, but I mean, it was a hard thing. I get it. It was very hard because there was many people in the southern states that were forced to be Democrats out of fear because of what the Democrats would do to them. So I get it, but, with those you could vet. You could vet and know the truth of it. But anyone who was easily recognized that were true, wholeheartedly self-willing and wanting Democrats should have been expelled from our nation, in my opinion. In this next Civil War coming, I believe that is exactly what needs to be done. Every enemy within our nation needs to be expelled, of not just Democrats, but also other national origins of things of which have been long established and declared enemies of the United States of America, and are clearly nothing but totalitarian regimes masking themselves as religions or religions and ideologies and protecting themselves under our Constitution of freedom of expression and religion to be able to use their totalitarian ideology and inform and infiltrate our nation with those totalitarian principles and values, right, while being protected by our Constitution. As ignorant idiots, we're allowing it because we just don't understand exactly what is going on or exactly what our Constitution protects and doesn't. But that's another video. But as I say here, you have the removal now of all this, and I watch these videos, I watch the news, where you got all these Democrats out there demanding the removal of the Confederate statues, and I'm sitting there wondering, I wonder if they all realize that the people they want removed are freaking Democrats. They don't even know it. That's what I say. And when you realize, how many people, look, here's the thing. Let's just take a look.
At this demonstration in Richmond,
how every one of these people here is a Democrat. 99.9% positive. Everybody here is a Democrat. See, I can't wrap my head around that. Not one of them took the time to do the due diligence. But obviously, not one of them. You know why? Because the majority of all these people live in Democratic-controlled cities and districts. And the Democrats in those cities and districts have deteriorating educational systems, and they have indoctrination stations. They don't have schools. They have indoctrination stations. And these people, sadly, are indoctrinated by the Democrats. And it's sad. It's very sad. And I realize that because I come from Newark. I understand the influence that they have. I've seen it as a child growing up. I watched how they came in and how they used the fear tactics. I can remember the Democratic constituents coming through Newark every 4 years or every 2 years with the elections, and how they would, tell the people, and you don't vote for the Democrats, you're going to lose your rental assistance, you're going to lose your food stamps, you're going to lose your Medicaid, you're going to lose your welfare check, you're going to lose your benefits, you're going to lose this, you're going to have to do that, and they would scare the shit out of people. And then too, they had everybody, like the police departments with the police unions. That's why Republicans don't like unions, and unions are not a good thing, especially when you have political influence within the unions. Because now with authoritarian positions like police departments, the Democrats have seized control of it across the country through the police unions. And while the dumbass cop people are, I'm sorry, if you're in a union and you're an American, you're not an American. You're a freaking traitor to the country. You're a traitor to the country. You're just a rider. Most of the people I know that are Democrats in union and whatever, and they know who they are. They're the most laziest, worthless goddamn humans on the earth. Really. If it wasn't for their democratic principle protection, they wouldn't qualify to scrape grease off a goddamn dumpster behind McDonald's, to be honest with you. They only have the prestige that they have and the wealth that they have because it's given them because they do as they're told by foreign interest. Their money comes from foreign interest, not earning it in America. No very wealthy, successful Democrat has his wealth from America. It all comes from a foreign interest play. You'll find that many of their movies, like the actors, the producers in Hollywood, when you look at these guys and you say, how does one get such money? Where does such money come from? Yeah, the movie industry, but you know what? It takes such money to get. What is the influence? How does it come? It comes from foreign interests. Why? Because they make their movies. This all started, too, in like the 60s and the 50s when cinema started taking off big, and even in the 40s. Foreign interests came in, like with the movies where you had like, believe it or not, and I'm going to tell you right now, there was a coordination with Hollywood of which many movie producers and actors had no idea. They were like dinos, no idea what was really going on. But behind the scenes on political pull within the Democratic Party and that of the true heads of the organization of the Democratic Party, I'm talking about the true elitist, no-good scumbags, the ones that are like the Woodrow Wilsons or the FDRs, the ones who know what's going on. When they needed the money to control Hollywood. They knew exactly how to get that money. All they needed to do was upbring some of their own children to become producers of these movies. And make these movies in such a way that they would introduce that of foreign totalitarian ideology through the movies to the American people. In a way that the American people wouldn't even be aware of it. And they did this through like the Arabian Sinbad movies. They made an exotic fantasy movies and things that would slowly introduce the culture of foreign ideologies and religions and things like that into the minds of the American people. And they used Hollywood. This is one of the things Hitler was incredibly fascinated with in the 1930s, was the movie cinema and how it could be used to influence the minds of the posterity of a country. And he's seen the power of it. And Hollywood became a bribery place, a means of instilling and infiltrating a country and instilling in that country foreign ideology. Because you would have the wealth of the oil rich in Saudi Arabia and the other Ottoman Islamic nations throwing that money at Hollywood to include their, write movies in a way where it includes indoctrinating the American people with that of foreign totalitarian ideology. This is why today you have so many so willing to accept these foreign ideologies. Because since the 1920s and 30s, these things have been being indoctrinated through movie cinema, intentionally planned, so for it to be accepting for the American people. And the posterity now for near 3 generations have been being indoctrinated through movie cinema. Cartoons now, today I see it, they're doing it with cartoons on the children, and they have been, they have been. There's all kind of indoctrination going on with cartoons on the children, the posterity, and now it's become a curriculum of teaching it as an ideology of principle that should be respected in our country, of what is, to me, absurd, because in truth, the very ideologies of some of the things that are being done with this way in this nature are that of known and declared enemies of the United States and the American people, and have been for all our founding time. Why are we authorizing and teaching and consenting to and protecting the teaching of foreign totalitarianism in our own nation, on our own American children? Why? Right? Yeah, it's a good question. Why? It's been going on for a long time, folks. But like I say, there's a civil war coming. I would advise every Democrat right now, because I know, in speaking with many, you're really an American, you're just an ignorant Dino. Do some due diligence if you see this video. Fact check me if you see this video. And if you find anything I'm saying is not to be the truth, there's a comment box below, you let me know. But anyway, we're going to continue on with the history. So we have the Espionage Act. Now this is an incredible thing right here. The Espionage Act was enacted by Woodrow Wilson. Not only was the Espionage Act, but now, oh, here we go. Benjamin Tillman. This is another thing. Now, with Woodrow Wilson, anyway, my point was back with Woodrow Wilson we were making was with all the federal monuments, the parks, recreations, the Ku Klux Klan, the showing of the Birth of a Nation, the Ku Klux Klan movie. And we're going to go forward, too, with this so you understand. Woodrow Wilson loved the Ku Klux Klan. He was a member of the Ku Klux Klan. He was a racist, elitist, no-good scumbag Democrat. He did not like the Jews. So, like I'm saying, this is a lie. And we're talking about the Belfort Act, that he had any kind of intentional love of the Jewish people. Like here, where Woodrow Wilson was a hero to the Jews. This is such a disgraceful freaking lie. Woodrow Wilson in the Belfort Declaration was not for the Jew at all. It was for the Muslims. And what he did was he helped establish and keep strong a Palestinian state, of which we still know today is still going on with Israel and Palestine. Right now, it was Woodrow Wilson who was part of establishing the very conflict we see still going on right now with the attack on the Jews this day. So I would ask you, if you think if any Jew knew this truth and understood this truth in relation to Woodrow Wilson, that he was a part of the Belfort Act that secured Palestine and being where it is, and secured this ongoing issue to continue on, do you think they would think he was a hero? Do you think as the missiles come flying over and blow up their children, they'd be going, oh, you know, it's thank God to Woodrow Wilson this is going on, because had it not been for him, Palestine probably wouldn't even be right there. But because of him, it is. And what a hero. We have to give thanks to him. I don't think so. I don't think that's what's really going on. But anyway, so as I said, we'll continue on here, and you'll get the gist of it. Now, this is Woodrow Wilson with Benjamin Tillman. I don't know if you know who Benjamin Tillman is, but he was a Democrat. He was a staunch, true to the hardcore Democrat. And boy, if you look at that picture right there of Woodrow Wilson, let me see if I can get that to look a little bit bigger. I don't know if you can see. Boy, is he's just like he's meeting his hero. Look at that glee smile on Wilson's face. That's Wilson to the right here, you know. And yeah, that's Tillman to the left right there. You see him? That evil scumbag, elitist scumbag. Tillman was the man who led many of the red shirt, Democratic Party's red shirt clan groups. They were Ku Klux Klan men without the white hoods. They were a terrorist organization that would just go out and beat people on the streets, kick people's doors in, beat wives in their homes when their husbands were at work. These were just some of the most inhumane, disgusting, freaking worthless cowards that the world had ever seen. And they're Democrats. This is what I said is true. They wouldn't do it while the husband was home. They knew there was a high likely chance, being he was a Republican, he'd have a gun in that house. He'd probably shoot the shit out of him. Because most Republicans, there was a lot of true Republicans who obviously would be the ones that would be the targets of the red Democratic Party's red shirts and the Democrats. Be that of true Republicans who had balls and didn't take no shit and were making waves. And that would be the ones that become a target. While the guy's out, they would send red shirts to the house, kick in the door, beat his wife and kids. And I'm talking beat them badly. You know, and people just aren't aware of what, you know, like today you talk about racial issues. Let me tell you something. The truth of America is one people of all equal. And that of the true republicanism of Americanism of one people of all equal, we stood and we stand together as one. There is no racism. We all took the blows the same. We all got lynched the same. We all got beat the same, and we still are this day. And that's a goddamn fact. You look at how many hundreds of thousands of white Republicans died in the Civil War to free black Americans. I can damn well tell you any black American who understands that and any white American who understand it was not a color issue, it was a humanity issue. And it was simply we were one people of all equal. And that's why we were willing to fight and die in the Civil War for that. To show we meant that. And in that Civil War, many blacks fought as well and died. For their own freedom. There was no racism bullshit. And there is no racism bullshit in America. Not the true United States of America. Only the Democratic Party of America. That's the only place racism existed. Get real. But anyway, Tillman here. This is him and President Woodrow Wilson. Now, the reason I mention it, because everybody knows that Benjamin Tillman was a major organizer, like I said, of the gangs of the red shirts, the Democratic Party's red shirts. And he was also a very well-known lover and praiser, bragger of the onslaught and slaughters they did on black communities with the Ku Klux Klan. And here you got the President of the United States, Woodrow Wilson, gleefully smiling at this man like, man, oh man, it's so great. I'm meeting my hero. Look at that Democrat, loving his friend. Yeah, as we go forward, we'll touch a little bit more on Tillman and who he is so you can understand a real picture of who. And mind you, Tillman hated Jews. And I'm just trying to say to you, this is the truth among the bullshit you're getting fed. If you're a Democrat, you read these biography books written by Democrats about Woodrow Wilson, hey, I'm got news for you. You're being lied to, okay? You're being lied to. Do the due diligence, do the research, check the facts of truth. So as we go forward right here, the Sedation Act. Now this was an incredible thing because of World War I, Woodrow Wilson issues the Sedation Act. Now, there's a reason that I'm showing you these things here. Benjamin Tillman, Woodrow Wilson, the Sedation Act. Back here, the Espionage Act. And that's because what is going on with the Democrats, with Woodrow Wilson as president now? Up until this point, I'm going to explain to you something. Up until this point in America, let me give you a picture of what's been going on. Prior to Woodrow Wilson, you had a stint of just a few, Democrats that were running as for president. But the Republicans had a great unity with the black communities across this nation. Prosperity for black Americans and white Americans working in unity together was creating a society of one people, of all equal, equally enjoying wealth, equally prospering in growth and equality and the ability to pursue their dreams and happiness unobstructed and protected by the Constitution of the United States. And you know what? Millions of white Americans and black Americans united together would stand together against the tyranny of the Democrats. And out of that unity together, there was many uprisings of black successful communities, like Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma. You had big plantations where blacks had together, by advice and counsel together with white and black Republicans together, business-mindedly figuring out ways to generate wealth for them as well as, themselves. Everybody together equally. Blacks had learned how to put money into buying land and buying big plantations in Florida, and they started their own orange groves and what have you, and they were prospering. And there was blacks in Texas that bought land and were hitting oil and striking oil and becoming millionaires. And they were sending their kids off to northern colleges where they didn't have to deal with the racism, and they were getting educated and returning. And on their return, they were starting and helping and aiding the black communities because they were becoming doctors and lawyers and judges and what have you. And they were able to then form good, valued, American principled societies of black communities. And they were prospering and doing great. You know who hated that? The goddamn Democrats. They just couldn't stand it. Now, the Republicans had no problem with it because the Republicans were right there with them. They were right there investing in and building with them and expanding with them, and that was the whole thing. They were working hand in hand, working and learning together for prosperity for all people of equal. Okay? And the Democrats couldn't stand it. And Wilson, we're going to take a quick, I'm going to step here and go, if I can find it right here. When we go and we look after the Civil War, Grover Cleveland was the first president of a Democrat after the Civil War. And I'm going to tell you right now, the Republicans up until that point, as you can see, it was just nothing but Republicans since Abraham Lincoln forward, all the way up until Grover Cleveland. Now, all the way up until this time, there was a unity between white Republicans and black Americans who were also Republicans. There was no damn black man in his right mind would be a Democrat when he realized the truth that the Democratic Party was the Confederate slave states. I mean, and you read their Constitution, the Democratic Party's Confederate slave state Constitution, and you realize that they made it a constitutional right to own a black person as a slave, and they made it a constitutional law that no black person born black could be free. I don't know. If you are, then you're one of them people, a little bit sick in the head, I guess, whatever. But when we go forward, like I'm just saying, it's just it doesn't make sense. And these things are all for the reason of that the Democrats could not stand, like with the Industrial Revolution taking place and the boom, blacks were filling many of those jobs. They were going north, they were getting educated, they were learning trades. Republicans were working hand in hand, white and black Republicans working hand in hand, Trades were being taught to them. They were becoming educated. They were starting their own business. And Democrats freaking hated it. Because you know what? Democrats, they like to take from everybody. They don't like to do anything, really. They don't do anything. They're worthless, lazy. The real true Democrats are worthless, elitist, scumbag, racist bastards. Okay? And they don't want it. But now, the blacks and white together were working great. The industrial boom and the revelation and the growth in America was booming. And blacks were prospering. They were doing great. Like I said, it was great communities. The Democrats had to start. Wilson became the Democrat, and Grover Cleveland also was the one who started the root of the foundation of the fear of what these people would do. And we'll explain that. You know, Wilson backed all the Jim Crow laws, so you're aware. And then what Woodrow Wilson was setting up for was, and the reason what he used the World War I for, when he did the Sedation Act, you see, it was an act in where you couldn't ridicule the government. You wind up getting 10 years in jail. So, and you couldn't speak out against the government. You get 10 years in jail. And what Wilson did was, after showing the birth of a nation, he had given a rein for the Ku Klux Klan to be able to go out. And all those now prospering black communities that were built between white and black Republicans across this country. And where now there was black millionaires, black doctors, black lawyers, successful black business owners, and he gave them the right to go in and just literally slaughter them and burn them down. And you know what? Nobody was going to write about it. Nobody was going to talk about it. Nobody was going to say a thing about it, because if they did, Wilson would have them put in jail under the Sedation Act. So they could do this unobstructed. And Wilson wasn't going to do a damn thing because he was a member of the Ku Klux Klan. He loved the Ku Klux Klan. And boy, in the red shirts and the Ku Klux Klan with Wilson in the White House, the Jim Crow laws in favor now, they went back out, and as we see, what was called Red Summer in 1919. And that was a sick, hard thing. And this is another sad thing. When you realize that World War I, the Americans went and fought with our allies. We fought with Australia, our ally. We fought with those people we believed had American principles and values against that of what we know was our own declared enemies. We knew that the Islamic Muslims were the enemies of America. They had been sort of the first four administrations, Washington, Jefferson, Madison, Adams, all condemned the Muslims in the first four government administrations of our nation as the enemies of mankind, the enemies of America, and the American people. And it was well known since then that the Muslims, the Islamic Muslims, were the enemies of America and the American people. And World War I was no different. And we went to help and aid our allies against the overthrow by these Islamic Muslims in World War I. And in that war, many black Americans went and fought in that war. Now, not only did the blacks earn their right as free Americans in the Civil War, this would again give them an opportunity to show their loyalty to America, which at that time, the reason they were so willing was because of the prosperity they had. There were so many prospering black communities and successful black communities rising in America, and the blacks were showing the curricula and academics, as well as actual wisdom and application. They were far exceeding anything the Democrats were doing. And man, the Democrats really couldn't stand that. They couldn't stand that. Most of the factory industrialization that was taking place, when jobs were being offered out, they were good paying jobs. And when Democrats would apply for these jobs, nobody wanted to hire a Democrat. They were lazy people. And that's why they formed the unions. You know, the Democrats formed the union as a way to secure themselves in the jobs in the Industrial Revolution, to make it where that they would have to hire them. And this is the God's honest truth. And under Wilson, boy, they sure made sure, because with the red shirts and the Ku Klux Klan, they forced out a lot of the workers who were black. They ran them out. They ran them out. There was nothing they could do. This was how blacks wound up in such poverty-stricken, beat-down communities. It was under Woodrow Wilson. He forced them right out of society back into a hellhole. And trust me, white Republicans paid with them, because many white Republicans were beat, slaughtered, and killed as well in trying to defend and standing with them. This is a fact most people aren't even aware of. So understand, it wasn't a white or black issue except for with the Democrats. That was the only people who had a race issue. But as far as true Americans, it was never a race issue. White and black stood together in unity as the Republicans of the Republic of the United States of America. And that's one people of all equal. And it's always been that way It's just that the propaganda of the media, the propaganda of the left, the propaganda of the Democrats, these worthless scumbag liars, they have twisted and confounded the history so badly, and they right now indoctrinate the posterity of the American children so badly with this propagated lie. It's just disgraceful. But anyway, the blacks right here, Red Summer was called Red Summer because, and then too, like I say, you had the blacks in World War I went and fought for this country, come back, and you got Woodrow Wilson waging his own Democratic Party war on the black communities across the country, slaughtering tens of thousands of blacks across the country, literally killing tens of thousands of blacks indiscretionally, with no one doing a damn thing to stop them. It was a horrible, horrible time. And you talk about, like I say right here too, and horrible, many Republicans took to the stands of trying to do something and were killed, hung, shot, murdered, beat as well. But the majority of Republicans is like today, then, were freaking cowards. You know, life was good, they were making money, and they were kind of like, you know what, just let the Democrats do what they want. They weren't real Republicans. They were worthless, no good freaking scumbags who just took America for what they could for themselves, with no true Americanism of values and principles that of true republicanism in them. What a disgraceful people. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you're a Republican and you sit back and you do absolutely nothing, and you watch all this go on, and you're not willing to put your life on the line for it, you're a scumbag. You're just take your place, know your place is what I'm saying. I don't give a damn who you are, know your place. But those who are real Americans know their place. But as we go forward right here, you got the Woodrow Wilson submits the Treaty of the Versailles. This again goes back to about the thing with Palestine. But we had the attack right here, Tulsa Race Massacre. Okay, it's Tulsa Black Wall Street, that used to be called. And then like I say here, the one thing people don't realize, which I was just touching on. Yeah, Grover Cleveland was the first Democrat since the Civil War. William McKinley was a Republican following him. They killed him. But the thing what you recognize, the thing that people don't want, if you want to know the unity between white Republicans and black Republicans prior to Grover Cleveland and how strong that was, and if you want to claim racial issues, explain to me this. When Democrat Grover Cleveland came in, there was such a majority of white support for equality for black Americans that the attack wasn't even so much on blacks by the Democrats, it was on white Republicans. And the proof of that lies within the history when we look here. Many whites were lynched for fighting racism. I'll include these links because they touch on the fact of the matter no one even considers today of what is the truth. And that truth is that when you look here, lynchings by year, notice right here the first year of Grover Cleveland, 1884. You see it? And then we're going to go back to here, 1884. And look right here, 1884. See it? Whites lynched, 1884, 160. Blacks, 51. Almost 3 times the amount of white people during the first administration of Grover Cleveland were hung defending the rights of black people. And this is what was going on. You see, and it was that battle, that stand by white Republicans and black Republicans standing in unity together as Americans, as true Americans of the Republic of one people of all equal, stood the Grover Cleveland era. Now we had Benjamin Harrison, who the Democrats killed. They assassinated Harrison. Or no, he wasn't. Yeah, no, he wasn't assassinated. But then Grover Cleveland again was the first time split term president. But you see, they won. They didn't really win. They got elected. They got him elected through fear, and stealing the elections. They have been stealing the elections, and they started trying to steal elections since Abraham Lincoln, of which we're facing the very same situations today, and it's a fact. Which as we progress forward, we're going to continue on, and I hope everybody understands. A long video, I get it, but it's going to take time. But what I'm saying is, when you look here, that's the year Grover, 1884. And when you look at the lynching, 1884, 160 whites were hung, 51 blacks. Total hangings, 211. And the same thing now when you go back here and you look at the second term, 1892, you see a little bit of difference here. Because in the second term, and then if you really reflect on the history, it's not really. What happened was many of the lynchings in this here, under it, they had learned from the first one that what they made a mistake as them being, they the fear is what it was, the fear. This shows you how many became cowardly of the Republicans from the first administration. Then the focus went on to the black communities again by the Democrats. And it just continued. And that's what I'm just saying. Now, the red shirts were the ones behind this. You see, the Democrats have these little hidden secret societies. The red shirts, the Ku Klux Klan, and there's Democratic Party. They're all part of the Democratic Party. Now, the red shirts they didn't wear hoods or anything, and you just never knew who they were. Most of the red shirts are union heads and things like that. And the red shirts are people that the Democrats make sure they place in as like federal district appeals judges and things like that. These are guys who are going to be placed in positions that, should their Democratic constituents have to do some dirty things and then have to go through the legal process, they have a path to direct them to their people, and where in the end results they can get away with it. They have learned to use the fibers of what America established to be a nation of balanced for justice for all, in a way to benefit them to be legally protected while acting criminal. And that's what we've allowed. And today our society it's just ridiculous when you, in my opinion, when you look for real at it, you say to yourself, it's like absurd that we've allowed things to get to where they are today and how bad they are. It's just absurd. But it is that bad. It is. But the red shirts, if you're not familiar, you want to take a look and read on that. It's the Democratic Party terrorist organization that still exists today very strongly. They have gone to organized crime levels now. And I know this. I know this because I've spoken to ex-former Democratic Party red shirt members who have informed me and told me in this day how they organize as lawyers, judges, state attorneys, mayors, local town commissioners, county commissioners, how they seek out elected positions as police officer, chief of police, well, so they can control the societies and the communities. Okay? And people just don't realize how far wide it's spread. It is. But the good news is the majority of Americans are not. The sad news is the majority of Americans don't have the balls to do anything about it. But there is an equal balance of those who do that can take that whole evil out. And will soon, I believe. Soon there's a civil war coming. But I believe there's a civil war coming again in America very soon. And but anyway, Benjamin Tillman, as we spoke on Woodrow Wilson's buddy here, and who he's got monuments he put up of this guy, okay, was a Democratic Party, okay, right here, let me just read, was an American politician of the Democratic Party who served as the governor of South Carolina from 1890 to 1894, and as a United States Senator from 1895 until his death in 1918, a white supremacist who opposed civil rights for black Americans. Okay? This is on Wikipedia. The left Democrats, one of your own freaking, because I'll tell you, Wikipedia, you can't trust Wikipedia either, because they're infiltrated with Democrats writing a full line of lies on history, like you wouldn't believe. And as a person who studied world history and U.S. history in depth, I mean really deep, with the concerns of only wanting to know the truth, I can tell you right now, it's scary. It's to the point it's scary. They are literally rewriting world history and history in a way to indoctrinate that of the posterity of today so that they have no clue of the truth of the past or of the present, who they are really dealing with and who their enemies are. It's very, very, very scary. But like I say, here's that picture again, Woodrow Wilson with that man, Benjamin Tillman. Okay, so Woodrow Wilson, the so-called lover of Jews, Ku Klux Klan member, supporter of the Red Jackets, Red Shirts, right here shaking hands with one of the leaders of the top organizers of the Red Shirts in that time, who he was like, look at that face. It's like, that right there is like an Elvis Presley fan meeting Elvis. You know what I'm saying? Look at that face on him, boy. He's just so enthralled to be meeting this guy and shaking his hand. It's just, this is the reality. I'm just saying to you. And like we went before, we touched the Tillman monuments that were put up to this guy by the Democratic Party, and still being put up to this very day, up until the Democrats themselves, the Dino Democrats themselves anyway, the ignorant Dino Democrats decided they want to remove the Confederate statues. Now all of a sudden the administration of the Democrat in Washington are like, oh yeah, well, wait, don't tell them that we put them up now. Don't. Let's act like the Republicans put them up. Really, cut me a goddamn break. You think the Republicans would go put a bunch of goddamn non-citizens, not even Americans, up in our country? Get me a break. They're not even American citizens. Democrats are not Americans. They're the traitors within. They've always been the traitors within. It's a fact. But so you know, in 1916, I'll include this as the Republican Party's platform, which was protect American rights, equality. That's, you know, it's always been the same. That platform didn't stand. But you had this standoff here, like I say. Now in relation, we're going to touch on recent topics. We got the big deal going on right now. So now that was the history closeout for the end, just so you know, the Woodrow Wilson era goes up to 1921 where he's leaving. We'll pick up on that with the next history. For actual history, I just want to close it out. So now we're just going to touch on some of the current events that take place. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to close off with this. We'll make another video on current. Now I better keep going because it's in the trend of what it is. I know it's long, folks, and you can watch this in sessions, I guess. But like I say, the current thing right now is with Donald Trump, to steal the election thing going on, and the insurrection, as they're calling it, in Washington, D.C., and, you know, people are saying how it's not so. Let me tell you something. Right here, you got like the Dewey defeats Truman. Okay, Dewey was the Republican in this run, and it was pretty clear by the nation, kind of like with Donald Trump, that he was going to win. And you know what? This is the first time the Democrats just literally stole an election. They also did the same thing with Woodrow Wilson. So in a sense, this is part on topic as well to what happened to the Wilson era. Wilson as well was not declared the actual winner, but then was, because they just simply stole the election. And like I said, due to cowardly Americans and cowardly Republicans, who when they would do this, pretty much the Democrats do the same as they did just now with Joe Biden, and they're like, well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Well, let me tell you something. This time, you know, I'm going to explain to you some things about, we're going to go a little bit more. Right here was the 1916, the presidential election, the Harold got wrong. Right here was, so you know about the Woodrow Wilson election, what I'm saying, what used right here. It was a Hughes and Wilson election. They did the same thing. They stole the election. U.S. election results, Joe Biden, same thing. Now, I'm going to explain to you a little bit about the Insurrection Act. That was 1807. You might want to read up on this right here and understand what it is. It's the right of the president to be able to call the militias of the state when we have an inward enemy or foreign infiltration, whatever it is, that's trying to insurrect our nation. Or you have a political establishment rising up. It happened where we had a political establishment, for example, rising up out toward the California area back in 1807, and where it was believed that an American politician was attempting to form his own little country out there and insurrect the United States. The Insurrection Act was the right of the president to be able to call up the militias of the states themselves to maintain and secure that part of the country and stop it from being taken over by an inward totalitarian scumbag or elitist who thinks he can take over a part of our country and make it his own. You know, whatever, in layman terms. Okay, but the Insurrection Act was that right. Now, this has been amended over time, several times, with, you know, as it progressed throughout history forward. But Abraham Lincoln would use the Insurrection Act to call forth the militia to suppress the attempted overthrow of the United States by the Democratic Party's Confederate slave states. Now, this is the perfect example of the Insurrection Act and the Civil War. And what the Civil War really was, you see, it's taught as if there was a civil divide between American people, and that's not true. The Civil War was that of the Democratic Party, Confederate slave states, against the Republican Party's Republic of the United States. You see, they were that of a foreign interest, inward enemy who had been here since the Revolutionary War. The Democrats were formed out of the British Tory loyalists. They were loyal to foreign interests, not the American people or the United States of America or our Constitution. They had been now trying to overthrow the United States since the founding in 1776 all the way up to 1861. And 1861 would be the point where the Democrats would actually form a collective group of states, establish their own military, elect their own president, Democrat Jefferson Davis, draft their own Democratic Party's Confederate slave state constitution, and attempt to take those states from the United States. And that's what resulted in the Civil War. Abraham Lincoln would use the Insurrection Act to call forth the state militias of the United States American men to defend our nation. And that's exactly what we did. And it would be one of the bloodiest bloodsheds of American lives spilled on our own soil because of the damn no good, disgusting, evil, racist enemies within the Democrats. Now, what we see happening in time here, like now you have these Capitol Police, Union Capitol Police. Every one of these cops up here, let me tell you something right now. I'm an American Republican. I'm a true American. I know my place as an American. And you know, I got the right of freedom of expression. I'm going to tell you what, you're all a bunch of worthless, goddamn scumbag cowards. Look at you. You're a disgrace. You're not Americans. You're a disgrace. Every freaking cop sitting there is a goddamn worthless piece of shit disgrace. The funny thing is, they're all Democrats. Some of them are foreigners. They're not even born here. They became, and I'm not down on anybody who becomes an American, but obviously the ones here don't meet the standards of what should have been allowed to become an American because they don't understand the truth of American republicanism. And that's, and I know right now people go, well, we also got them. No, we don't. Show me in the Constitution where it consents to a democratic state. Show me. I can show you in the Constitution. Article 4, Section 4 of the United States Constitution only guarantees a Republican form of government. I see nowhere in my Constitution of my United States, of which I'm a citizen of, where it guarantees a democratic state. Nowhere. Any real American should know that. But anyway, these guys are cowards, disgraceful cowards. And when you listen to their witness testimony, you realize they're ignorant, worthless, disgusting, inhumane pieces of shit cowards is what they are. It's just disgraceful. But my point about it is United States Capitol attack. Now, I was in Washington, D.C. on January 6th. I was there back in November. I was there in November. I was back in January. I was there when it happened. I seen what happened. And I spoke to people all day long about what was happening. And it wasn't everybody. It wasn't everybody. Believe me, if everybody went into the Capitol, it would have been a whole different story. There was a small group of people went in. And the majority of those people were just trying to see what the hell was going on. There was a front line of people who had a plan to do what they did. And I got news for you. They were not Trump supporters. They were not Americans. Let me tell you, the funny thing I remember, some of the funny things I remember, I was with somebody and we were over by the bathroom there where they had the porta potty things and the food trucks. And there was a group of Black Lives Matter looking to recruit Antifa and Trump supporters to unite. Yeah. Right? Funny thing about Black Lives Matter group that was there, though, the majority of those that were standing there looked more like Antifa white kids than blacks. It was kind of weird. And I remember looking at that and thinking, that's pretty weird. Look at that. A group of white kids with Black Lives Matter signs looking to recruit Antifa and Trump supporters to unite. Funny, right? And yeah, that's the guys who organized and instigated the whole thing of going in. Now, I'm going to tell you something straight up that I witnessed and I was there. All the cops had guns. Now, they try to make out the Trump supporters just as being, let me tell you something. If the people, they outnumbered everybody. There was no way. There was near 700,000 people there. All, from my opinion, anybody who showed up that day, obviously, was a true American. Truly loved America in their heart. Because to go there that day, you went to show, make a stand. That's what I went for. To show I'm a true American. I'm going to be here this day. I'm going to come support as a Republican. To the true Republican principles I stand for. And I'm going to put my business on hold, my life on hold, my family on hold, and I'm going to go there this day. And there was 700,000 other people who felt that way, and they went that day. That's what they were there for, to make a stand. Now, let me tell you something. Donald Trump was elected to get rid of the people and the corruption. Obviously, he underestimated how widespread it was. I've been saying it for decades, and I've been seeing it for decades, how widespread it is. Donald Trump maybe thought about it being in a small sector of the circle of Washington, not realizing how widespread it is between the states and the counties and the cities and the districts, how the Democrats have spread across this nation and have infiltrated the justice system with judges, lawyers, state attorneys, prosecutors, you name it, the mayors. They got everything. And they run all the departments, Child Protective Services, DIFAS, HRS, all these things, family court, you name it. They got control of all of it. They got control of the people in the communities of it. They got control of all the people on public assistance with it. And, and they got control, like Donald Trump didn't realize what an idiot he was, and his Back the Blue movement. Now, I'm not saying I back the blue. I back the blue of true cops. I know many good sheriffs that were true constitutional officers that actually read the Constitution. They really cared. Sad thing I can say, and I can honestly say, is I know 4 sheriffs that I've known for years that I had great respect for. I knew were true constitutional sheriffs. They knew the Constitution. They studied American history. Matter of fact, when we would see each other, we would talk about American history. It would be great conversation. We were like 2 peas in a pod whenever I was together with these guys. And those cops have resigned and taken different careers because they will no longer be a part of the corruption. It's kind of like the guy who did the video on YouTube, who was a true American, and he got fired because he exemplified American principles and values of republicanism, and he got fired. Unbelievable. Unbelievable, the things we're seeing right in our own face and live on things where you can pull it up and you can see it. It's happening right in our face, but nobody's doing a damn thing about it. But the true LEO, the true law enforcement are leaving. True teachers, as we're starting to see right now, are quitting their jobs. True American teachers are not falling anymore. They're not going to do it. They understand it, and the unions is how it's all being controlled. You see, by the unions with the Democrats, they're able to control the police departments through the policing unions. They're able to control the teachers through the teachers unions. And now people are starting to maybe wake up, I'm hoping, and realize how dangerous these unions are. And those who have been benefiting from the unions don't even realize it. I know a guy, I remember when I was younger, and I had an independent contract thing with New Jersey Steel. And he was a guy who worked for a factory thing in the auto industry union. And he was like, oh, I wouldn't do that, Then you should have a steel union. You should have the steel. You should be in the steel workers. I was like, I'll never join a goddamn union. I said, they hire me and they pay me what they pay me because they know that's what I'm worth. I don't need a union to tell me what I'm worth. I know what I'm worth. I said, most of you people would tell him he was a Democrat. And I knew him. He was a lazy, worthless piece of shit. He's not worth nothing. And the only reason he had his job because the union kept him employed. And that's why he wanted the union. And I explained to him, and I remember telling him then, I make what I make and I do what I do. And I get paid what I get paid because they know I'm worth it. They know I'm capable, I'm able. You only have what you have because you're in a union. And if it wasn't for the union, they'd fire your ass because you're worthless. But you know what? You're also so worthless and devalued in your own self that you don't even care. You'll take that handout any way you can get it because you lack in so much self-value, it doesn't even matter to you. You just simply don't care. You're really a Democrat. You're just disgraceful. And that's what I told him to his face. Democrats don't really care, though. I remember he looked at me and said, I don't give a shit. I'm getting paid. That's what he said. You see, a real American has pride, dignity, honor in this country, and who he is. He lives by an example. At least I know I do. I live by an example of trying to be a strong American. A reflection for my sons when they grow up, they see and they recognize what a man is. They understand what hard work means. They understand that applying yourself and doing the right thing. I can't make them follow that example, but I could be that example, and that's what I was. I was also an example of perseverance through no matter what this world does to you, throws at you. You persevere forward for what you believe in. You stand for your principles and your values. And you back down from no man, no judge, no court, no politicians, no government, no nothing. You fight. If it kills you, it kills you. But you fight for what you believe in. And you fight for what rightfully is yours. And you don't let nobody take it from you. That's the example I've been. And I know, when I say with my children, I know with my one son, it's a reflective that he has seen those values, he has adapted those values, and I am proud of my son because he reflects that of Americanism, republicanism, and those principles and those values. He is a great father to my grandson. He's a responsible and providing husband to my daughter-in-law, who is as well as an incredible woman who works extremely hard with him to provide for my grandson. They are the great reflection of what I can say. They're great Americans, and they're true Americans. So, in that sense, I have success on that. That's my greatest success above all I've ever done in life. To be able to have instilled the values in my son, to stand as a true American by his own will and choice, and amplify and to exercise and put into practice the applications of republicanism of principles and values that I reflected, and pursue forward with that as an American and have success. It's my success. It's my success. That's what we're supposed to do as Americans. Keep the posterity American. So I succeeded. So with that said, like I'm saying, now the Insurrection Act, you had the thing they're not telling you. You had to stay, everything's about the thing that happened in Washington, D.C. Well, let me tell you something. It wasn't just Washington, D.C. The thing they're not telling you is that right here. Events in state capitals during electoral vote count, January 6, 2021. This is what everybody's talking about. But right here, look at this list here. Phoenix, Arizona, Sacramento, California, Denver, Colorado, Tallahassee, Florida, Atlanta, Georgia, Honolulu, Hawaii. Do you know what was going on? Same thing. All the state capitals were being surrounded by Americans who are fed up. They're not telling you about that. Like here, look, Trump supporters take protests to state houses across the USA. Wasn't just Trump supporters. Wasn't just Trump supporters. A lot of those people were just regular Americans that they weren't even politically involved. But 33 states, 33 state capitals, collectively estimated almost 6 million people across the country. Way more than what was in Washington. But you don't hear nothing about them. They want to keep the focus on Washington, D.C. All the elitist scumbags of Republicans and Democrats alike in Washington, D.C. Or the political establishment and a bunch, oh my God, my life was at such risk. Your life was at such risk. I got news for you, you bunch of worthless scumbag cowards. When the shit really hits the fan, you're going to know what fear is. And you're going to face that fear. And in that day, you're going to face the reality that you should have never been in that position if your intent wasn't on the true republicanism of this country. Because you're going to be held accountable. You're all going to be held accountable. Either in this lifetime, in this time come when that civil war comes, or forever in eternity before God. You're going to be held accountable. That I can assure you. I have a great relationship with God. Mind you, I was as many when I was younger, knew it all. So you know how far my relationship with God has come. When I was 12, I was an atheist that believed in God. Now I walk with God proudly. And I know I make my sister Debbie and my sister Diane very proud because they love God. And I know my brother Bill and my mom are looking down shining because they love God. And they always wanted me to know the truth of God. And for them, I'm sure it's all a blessing for them to look upon me today and for them to know that I know, in fact, without question, 100% my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ is a real, alive, and well today. Which is my guarantee of insurance that one way or the other, you scumbags will pay. You will pay. I hope it comes in my day so I can see it. I really do. But I know one thing, if it doesn't, any afterlife, when you come, you will freaking see me. One way or the other, you're going to be accountable. I can guarantee that. And I know that because, God gives me great wisdom. And I can tell you what, and I'll share this one thing of wisdom with it all. Not everybody who's an American has a warrior's heart, and I get that. Not everybody who's a true American in heart has the courageous courage to fight and stand up and do what needs to be done. I get that. I get that. Understand this nation was founded by 3% of the population in 1776. 3% of the population is what founded this nation. The other 97%, many of them were true Americans. It just didn't have that in them. But you know what? They benefited. They prospered. They enjoyed. And they pursued happiness from the rewards of those men who did. And that has been the way it's been ever since. The problem is that majority now no longer respects that minority who will take that position. And it's not the blue, it's not the LEO, because the majority of the law enforcement across this country are nothing but like the clowns of the kings of the ancient. They're just revenue generators, bootlickers. They're Gestapo. They're jackboots. That's all. They're like Nazis. They do as they're told. They don't even read the Constitution. They take an oath to the disgraceful pieces of shit. I can't stand when I meet a cop or a sheriff and I ask him about the Constitution. He's never even read it. What a disgraceful piece of shit you are. What kind of disgraceful piece of shit takes an oath to something he's never read? You want to talk about a real loser? You got to be a real loser to take an oath to something, to get a job in such a powerful position of authority that you never even read. You can go out there and act like you're some kind of all that, when in truth you're nothing. Nothing but a worthless piece of shit. But, okay, so what I'm saying is now, so people are aware, those protests and those uprisings took place across 33 states in this country. 33 state capitals. And at that time, it had nothing to do with Donald Trump. It was just a massive movement by American people who have had enough, understood what was going on with this government, the corruption in it, and they were taking a position to remove this government, if that's what needed to be done. So you know, right here, the insurrection is happening at state capitals too. These were being put out January 6th. You see, nobody's talking about this on the news. I just want to make you aware. There was multiple, 33 state capitals, all experienced the same thing as Washington, D.C., by the people of their states who are fed up. Not just in Washington, D.C. It wasn't just people in Washington, D.C. It was happening across the country. Yep, it was happening across the country. But it is what it is now, right? It is what it is now. So, with that said, I hope you enjoyed this video. And we're going to transition back over now. That's it. That concludes my video for today. And I hope you enjoyed it. My points were to end out, and we were going to be heading into 1921 going forward in our American history. And I just wanted to touch on some of the ending things there and some of the things, and I'll include links to everything I posted here so real Americans who really want to do the due diligence and understand what's going on, understand that it appears to me by all the state capitals that were being taken as well, including Washington, D.C., and many people were fed up. I can assure you, those people were able, armed, and if needed, be armed and willing. But when Donald Trump, the thing that saved the government, they want to condemn Donald Trump. To be honest with you, when Donald Trump told everybody to stand down and go home, people believed that Donald Trump would have probably done like Abraham Lincoln and invoked the Insurrection Act at a later time and called up the militia to stop the actual insurrection that was taking place of the Democrats stealing the position in government to take control of the country. That's what I believe Americans thought was going to happen. And they stood down and they went home. Believe me, if they wanted to do damage, there wasn't a goddamn thing anybody was going to do. And if they still wanted to do damage, there's nothing anybody can do. Now, I understand afterward the Democrats they fortified Washington, and they had to. And this was disgraceful. It's the first time American assets were called in under the Insurrection Act by a government to protect that of a treasonous insurrecting government. That's exactly what it was, but we did. We had the National Guard. And that's what really, though they didn't do it for that sense, they did it because they knew that the majority of all the people in the 33 states and as well Washington, D.C., most of their guards, their nieces, their nephews, their brothers, their sisters, their sons, their daughters. And they weren't going to return and start a shootout with their own families. So it's been a slow review, slow watching of the idiocy going on in this country. The lawlessness, the corruption, the abuse of power. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. But it is what it is, and I believe a civil war is coming soon. And as far as with Donald Trump, I'm sorry, you're too liberal. You're a freaking coward because you knew what was going on. And when you realized what you really got into, you walked away and handed everything right over to the very people we elected you to remove. And right now we're all suffering for it. We're all suffering for it. Because we believed in you. And we waited on you. And instead of what was believed by the American people would happen to rid this nation finally of the enemies within the Democrats. Instead, your ass walked away like a coward with your tail between your legs. And you handed it right back over to them. Now you're out there and you're flaunting. I hear it. Maybe you got another plan. A lot of people keep talking. I supported you with everything I had for 4 years. I've always respected you, and I still respect everything you did. Can't take away from what you did. You are a great president. You're a great businessman. But as an American, you failed. Because you didn't remove the enemies within. The mission was clear, I believe. I mean, I knew why I voted for you. I knew why every other American Republican I knew, real American, voted for you. Why every real military man voted for you. But when it came down to it, it appears, I don't know. I don't know. I really can't speak on it because I'm not in your shoes, Donald Trump. I don't know. You know, sometimes when I'm thinking about it, I think possibly to live to fight another day kind of deal. Because, you know, rumor is that they were going to Baker Act you and appoint Pence and then suicide you like the Clintons did to so many people. So, you know, and I believe that's very possible, and it would have been a push off of the public. I mean, there's a gullible society in this country right now. They would buy anything. And but I believe had they done that, that would have definitely strengthened the Civil War as well. But I also believe that, you know, their threat of doing that wouldn't have gone off. As soon as they would have tried to Baker Act you, the American people, we would have stopped it. But you, I don't believe it was any of that. I just believe it was, I seen your face, man. I seen your face. I seen your eyes. I seen you when you walked out the White House and left that day. And what I seen in that moment was something I'd never seen in you before. It was a coward. It's a broken coward. That's my opinion right now. So with that, I'm going to leave off. Thank you all for watching my video. Have a great day. I hope you enjoyed it. And there's a comment box below if you'd like to comment. To end out with, I have closed down my HVAC business after 37 years in the construction trades. I'm leaving the trades, and I'm planning on devoting my entire life and all my ability toward preserving God for my country, my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and making it well known that America is a Christian-founded nation, and reestablishing Christian-founded principles and order in this country is what it should be. As well, I'm going to do all I can to bring people awareness of the history of this nation and the truth and the facts of who we are as this great republic and what republicanism really is. So with that is my goal going forward. These videos will help. All I can ask is that you watch them, comment on them so that they stay active. Because if people don't comment or like them, then YouTube takes them down. I'm not looking for a stroke on my back for my ego. I just want to keep them up so that the posterity can come along and they can find it. And if they like me or they don't like me, they can do the due diligence. I'm hoping people don't like me, because when people don't like you, they're like, I'm going to go do some due diligence on this guy. I'm going to prove he's wrong. And when they do, they learn. And understand, if you don't like me, it's not me. It's the truth. You see? Because I'm just telling you the truth. And like I say, if there's anything I'm saying that's not the truth, you let me know. There's a comment box below if you want to debate it. I'm even willing to have a debate with you about it. We'll talk about it. You can be on here with me. How's that? I'm not afraid of it. Are you? If you're a Democrat and you want to have that conversation, I've been putting this offer out for 20 years. any Democrat would like to have the debate, come on, bring it. I'm open to it. I really would love to have the debate. Again, thank you all for watching my video, and I'll see you next time. I'm going to try and stay on topic to history, and maybe a little briefer. This was long. I haven't been on for a while. And this is ad-lib. I don't have a script. I went way off from what I was hoping to do, because as I go, my mind is running, and you know how it goes. But thank you all again for watching my video, and I'll see you next time. Have a great week.